Chapter 1. Don't try to be somebody you're not. Choose what to give a fuck about. Conventional life advice. All the positive and happy self-help stuff we hear all the time is actually fixating on what you lack. It lasers in on what you perceive your personal shortcomings and failures to already be and then emphasizes them for you. You learn about the best ways to make money because you feel you don't have enough money already. You stand in front of the mirror and repeat affirmations saying that you're beautiful because you feel as though you're not beautiful already. Ironically, this fixation on the positive, on what's better, what's superior, only serves to remind us over and over again of what we are not, of what we lack, of what we should have been but failed to be. After all, no truly happy person feels the need to stand in front of a mirror and recite that she's happy. She just is. The fixation on positives only serves to remind us what we lack. Either you are truly happy or you are not. Don't try to be somebody you're not. Our society keeps telling us to be more, and more positive all the time. And to be positive all the time, we are constantly getting the same message again and again, which is to give a fuck about everything again and again. Sadly, giving more fuck doesn't guarantee you to be positive and live a better life. The key to a good life is not giving a fuck about more. It's giving a fuck about less, giving a fuck about only what is true and immediate and important. As humans, we care too much about things that don't matter, and this makes us feel bad about ourselves. Mark Manson calls this the feedback loop from hell. Simply put, you feel a certain feeling for some reason or no obvious reason at all, and having this feeling makes you feel even worse. Ever notice that sometimes when you care less about something, you do better at it? Notice how it's often the person who is the least invested in the success of something that actually ends up achieving it. Notice how sometimes when you stop giving a fuck, everything seems to fall into place. The feedback loop from hell has become a borderline epidemic, making many of us overly stressed, overly neurotic, and overly self-loathing. For instance, you get anxious about confronting somebody in your life. That anxiety cripples you, and you start wondering why you're so anxious. Now you're becoming anxious about being anxious. Now you're anxious about your anxiety, which is causing more anxiety. The solution to the feedback loop from hell is simple. Don't give a fuck about your negative experiences, anxiety, anger, guilt, fear, etc. Because it's okay having these feelings. It's okay to feel bad sometimes. Don't make it worse by beating yourself up for feeling that way. The desire for a more positive experience is itself a negative experience. And, paradoxically, the acceptance of one's negative experience is itself a positive experience. Don't give a fuck about your negative experiences. So, what exactly does not giving a fuck mean? Let's look at 3 subtleties that should help clarify the matter. Subtlety number 1. Not giving a fuck does not mean being indifferent. It means being comfortable with being different. In life, not giving a fuck is absolutely impossible. You have to give a fuck about something, but you have to choose it right. You have to enjoy the fuck that you give. You should be willing to be different, and not take what the society deems important as your standard. You should decide for yourself what is truly important to you, and don't care about what others think. Subtlety number 2. To not give a fuck about adversity, you must first give a fuck about something more important than adversity. Finding something important and meaningful in your life is perhaps the most productive use of your time and energy. Because if you don't find that meaningful something, your fucks will be given to meaningless and frivolous causes. Simply put, don't hand out fucks to meaningless things like your Santa Claus, but find something really important to dedicate your fucks to. Subtlety number 3. Whether you realize it or not, you are always choosing what to give a fuck about. Be more selective about what you give a fuck about. It's called maturity. In other words, maturity is happiness when you learn to only care about things that are essential. This simplification actually makes us really happy on a consistent basis. Pain is an inextricable thread in the fabric of life, and to tear it out is not only impossible but destructive. Attempting to tear out unravels everything else with it. To try to avoid pain is to give too many fucks about pain. In contrast, if you're able to not give a fuck about the pain, you become unstoppable. Chapter 2. Happiness requires struggle, and it only comes from solving problems. There's a premise that underlies a lot of our assumptions and beliefs. The premise is that happiness is algorithmic, that it can be worked for and earned and achieved as if it were getting accepted to law school or building a really complicated Lego set. If I achieve X, then I can be happy. If I look like Y, then I can be happy. If I can be with a person like Z, then I can be happy. The premise is the problem. Happiness isn't a solvable equation. sadness, dissatisfaction, unease, etc., are part of inherent human nature, and they are the necessary component to create consistent happiness. Don't hope for a life without problems. There's no such thing. Instead, hope for a life full of good problems. To be happy, we need something to solve. Happiness is, therefore, a form of addiction. It's an activity, not something that is passively bestowed upon you, not something that you magically discover in a top 10 article on the Huffington Post. We like the idea that there's some form of ultimate happiness that can be attained. We like the idea that we can alleviate all of our sufferings permanently. We like the idea that we can feel fulfilled and satisfied with our lives forever. But we cannot. Happiness requires struggle, and it comes from solving problems. Happiness is a constant work in progress. True happiness occurs only when you find the problems you enjoy having and enjoy solving. The secret of happiness is finding the problems you enjoy solving. Everybody wants the good things in life. We all want to feel good all the time. People never consider the pain they are okay with. What are they willing to struggle for? We just want the rewards, the results. Nobody is willing to go through the process. Most of us don't want to struggle and to give it some effort. If you feel crappy, it's because your brain is telling you that there's a problem that's unaddressed or unresolved. In other words, negative emotions are a call to action. When you feel them, it's because you're supposed to do something. The struggle is the key to happiness, and it grows from problems. The path to happiness is a path full of disappointments and shame. No matter where you go, there's a 500-pound load of shit waiting for you. And that's perfectly fine. The point isn't to get away from the shit. The point is to find the shit you enjoy dealing with. Chapter 3. No one is special or exceptional in any way. Sometime in the 1960s, developing high self-esteem, having positive thoughts and feelings about oneself, became all the rage in psychology. Researchers revealed that people who thought highly about themselves generally performed better and caused fewer problems. Business and motivational seminars cropped up chanting the same paradoxical mantra. Every single one of us can be exceptional and massively successful. But it's a generation later and the data is in. We're not all exceptional. It turns out that merely feeling good about yourself doesn't really mean anything unless you have a good reason to feel good about yourself. It turns out that adversity and failure are useful and even necessary for developing strong-minded and successful adults. People with high self-esteem usually feel good about themselves, feeling that they are doing something great even when they are not. Well, you can't blame anyone. That's the movement in our society now. Being overly positive and having high self-esteem is actually a good thing, as it is contagious and it helps motivate people. However, one thing wrong about this high self-esteem movement is that it requires people to feel good all the time. The metrics used in this movement is how positive they feel and think about themselves, whereas more accurate metrics would be how people feel, think, and accept their negative selves. A true and accurate measurement of one's self-worth is how people feel about the negative aspects of themselves. People who feel entitled view every occurrence in their life as either an affirmation of or a threat to their own greatness. If something good happens to them, it's because of some amazing feat they accomplished. If something bad happens to them, it's because somebody is jealous and trying to bring them down a notch. Entitlement isn't impervious. People who are entitled delude themselves into whatever feeds their sense of superiority. The problem with entitlement is that it makes people need to feel good about themselves all the time, even at the expense of those around them. They end up spending most of their time thinking about themselves. Often, the first and most important step towards solving our problems is the realization that you and your problems are actually not privileged in their severity or pain. The high self-esteem movement is telling us to feel special all the time. Everyone says it. Celebrities, politicians, famous people, actors and actresses all say it. Being average has now become the new standard of failure. A lot of people are afraid to accept mediocrity because they believe that if they accept it, they'll never achieve anything, never improve, and that their life won't matter. Try as much as possible to be grateful and appreciate the small things in life, and not see mediocrity as a bad thing. However, what most people don't know is that knowledge and acceptance of your own mundane existence will actually free you to accomplish what you truly wish to accomplish, without judgment or lofty expectations. Chapter 4. Don't prioritize your life around useless causes. Focus only on important values. As humans, we often choose to dedicate large portions of our lives to seemingly useless or destructive causes. Sometimes we know deep down that what we're going to do is going to make us suffer, but we still do it anyway. Because to us, this suffering means something. And because it means something, we are able to endure and perhaps enjoy the suffering. In life, whether you like it or not, suffering is inevitable. Sure, you could try to avoid them, but one sure fact is that avoiding negative things will always backfire. Don't avoid them. Don't ask questions like, how do I stop suffering? You just have to accept and face them. Just face them and ask yourself this: why am I suffering? For what purpose? Suffering is inevitable in life. However, this isn't an easy question to answer. Mark Manson uses a metaphor to help us understand ourselves: the self-awareness onion. Self-awareness is like an onion. There are multiple layers to it, and the more you peel them back, the more likely you're going to start crying at inappropriate times. The first layer of this onion is a simple understanding of your own emotion. How do I feel? What is this emotion? I'm sad. I feel happy right now. I'm sad when I see that, etc. This is simple to some people, but to some, it is quite difficult. Sometimes you try to hide or deny your feelings. The second layer is the ability to ask why we feel certain emotions. Why do I feel that way? Why am I sad? Why am I kind of depressed? The third layer is our personal values. Why do I consider this to be success or failure? How am I choosing to measure myself? By what standard am I judging myself and everyone around me? This level, which takes constant questioning and effort, is incredibly difficult to reach. But it's the most important because our values determine the nature of our problems, and the nature of our problems determines the quality of our lives. So clearly knowing your values is important because, in the end, they determine the quality of your life. If you want to change how you see your problems, you have to change what you value and/or how you measure failure or success. Your values determine the nature of your problems. Some values, according to the author, are shitty. They create poor problems that can hardly be solved. Some of these shitty values include pleasure, material success, always being right, and staying positive. These values seem right, but they are actually horrible values to prioritize your life around. Staying positive might seem like a golden nugget, but we can't deny the fact that things go wrong. People upset us. Accidents happen. These things make us feel like shit, and that's fine. Negative emotions are a necessary component of emotional health. To deny that negativity is to perpetuate problems rather than solve them. Good values, on the other hand, are reality-based, socially constructive, and immediate and controllable. Examples of good healthy values include honesty, innovation, vulnerability, standing up for oneself, standing up for others, self-respect, curiosity, charity, humility, creativity. When we have poor values, that is, poor standards we set for ourselves and others, we are essentially giving fucks about the things that don't matter, things that in fact make our lives worse. But when we choose better values, we are able to divert our fucks to something better, toward things that matter, things that improve the state of our well-being, and that generate happiness, pleasure, and success as side effects. Chapter 5. Take radical responsibility for your life and embrace uncertainty. That's how you'll enjoy growth and progress. There is a simple realization from which all personal improvement and growth emerge. This is the realization that we, individually, are responsible for everything in our lives, no matter the external circumstances. If we realize that we're responsible for everything in our lives, then we get to improve ourselves. No matter the circumstances, it's your responsibility. It doesn't matter who's at fault. It's always your responsibility because you can choose what you make of it. We are responsible for everything in our lives. There's a difference between blaming someone else for your situation and that person's actually being responsible for your situation. Nobody else is ever responsible for your situation but you. Many people may be to blame for your unhappiness, but nobody is ever responsible for your unhappiness but you. This is because you always get to choose how you see things, how you react to things, how you value things. You always get to choose the metric by which to measure your experiences. Often, the only difference between a problem being painful or being powerful is a sense that we chose it, and that we are responsible for it. Also, endeavor to embrace doubt and uncertainty, because certainty is the enemy of growth. Instead of striving for certainty, you should be in constant search of doubt. Doubt about your own beliefs, doubt about your feelings, doubt about what the future may hold for you unless you get out there and create it for yourself. Instead of looking to be right all the time, we should be looking for how we're wrong all the time, because we are. In most situations, we get an intuition that says something is good or bad, but in reality, we don't know. It seems a certain way, but we don't know. So maybe it's good and maybe it's bad. How about taking it as it comes? It's okay how it is. Maybe it'll benefit us, and maybe it'll harm us. We simply do not know for sure. Uncertainty is the root of all progress and all growth. As the old adage goes, the man who believes he knows everything learns nothing. We cannot learn anything without first not knowing something. The more we admit we do not know, the more opportunities we gain to learn. Uncertainty is the root of all progress and all growth. Doubt yourself, your thoughts, your belief, and always be in a constant search of doubt. Doubt that you will have a good future if you just sit around playing the victim and doing nothing but cry. Asking yourself questions like, what if I'm wrong? What could it mean if I were wrong? Would being wrong create a better or worse problem than my current problem for both myself and others? Will help you be a little less certain about yourself. Embracing uncertainty is a vital step towards assessing our values and prioritizations. In the end, if we want to change and let go of those values, we need to become uncertain of current values. Chapter 6. Success Paradox. Failure is the way forward. Improvement at anything is based on thousands of tiny failures, and the magnitude of your success is based on how many times you've failed at something. If someone is better than you at something, then it's likely because she has failed at it more than you have. Improvement is based on multitudes of failures. There's a common saying that talent is overrated. Yes, it's overrated. Success is more about the work you put into something rather than your preconditions. We can be truly successful only at something we're willing to fail at. If we're unwilling to fail, then we're unwilling to succeed. If you think about a young child trying to learn to walk, that child will fall down and hurt itself hundreds of times. But at no point does that child ever stop and think, oh, I guess walking just isn't for me. I'm not good at it. Failure and pain are part of the process. If you want to succeed at something, you will certainly have to fail many times. As we grow older, we develop an avoidance of failure. This basically has to do with our education system, overbearing and critical parents, and with mass media. This avoidance of failure creates avoidance of the necessary actions to succeed at things. Manson suggests setting process-oriented goals and just starting to take action with his do something principle. To avoid failing is to avoid taking actions to succeed. When Manson was in high school, his math teacher, Mr. Packwood, used to say, if you're stuck on a problem, don't just sit there and think about it. Just start working on it. Even if you don't know what you're doing, the simple act of working on it will eventually cause the right ideas to show up in your head. By applying this advice, Mark Manson discovered that action isn't just the effect of motivation. It's also the cause of it. In fact, it also has something to do with inspiration. Your actions create further emotional reactions and inspirations, and move you on to motivate your further actions. So, if you ever feel like you lack the motivation to do something, just start with some small actions. Anything works fine. And try to observe the results of your actions. You could then try to reap the fruit of those actions to motivate yourself. Chapter 7. Rejection is an important and critical life skill. Rejection makes your life better because it lets you focus on things that really matter and let go of things that don't. We need to reject something, otherwise we stand for nothing. If nothing is better or more desirable than anything else, then we are empty and our life is meaningless. We are without values and therefore live our life without any purpose. The desire to avoid rejection at all costs, to avoid confrontation and conflict, the desire to attempt to accept everything equally and to make everything cohere and harmonize is a deep and subtle form of entitlement. Rejection helps you focus on things that really matter. When you make a commitment to something, you must say no to something else. This doesn't tie you down, but frees you up from trivialities, so you can focus on what's most meaningful. For instance, deepening a relationship or mastering a craft. To build healthy relationships, both parties must be able to say no, thrash out their differences, establish their boundaries, and take ownership of their own problems. Only then can true understanding, trust, and acceptance be established. To value something, we must reject what is not that something. To value X, we must reject non-X. As humans, death scares us, and because it scares us, we avoid thinking about it, talking about it, sometimes even acknowledging it, even when it's happening to someone close to us. It's important we contemplate our morality from time to time in order to really live life to the fullest, happy and fulfilled. Yet, in a bizarre, backward way, death is the light by which the shadow of all life's meaning is measured. Without death, everything would feel inconsequential, all experience arbitrary, all metrics and values suddenly zero. Without death and loss, everything would feel inconsequential. Thinking deeply about death helps us to put our adversities in context and to appreciate life. If you fear death or are preoccupied with making sure that people remember you after you're gone, you won't be able to live fully. If you've confronted your mortality, however, you can accept your life as a passing grain in the timelessness of the universe and can focus on contributing to a wider cause that will outlive you. Then you'll find true peace and happiness and become free to live each day to the fullest. We all must give a fuck about something in order to value something. And to value something, we must reject what is not that something. To value X, we must reject non-X. Did you know? Honesty is a natural human craving. But part of having honesty in our lives is becoming comfortable with saying and hearing the word no. In this way, rejection actually makes our relationships better and our emotional lives healthier. Conclusion. We try to do too much in life, and this only results in stress and unhappiness. We all need to learn to stop giving a fuck about the things that are causing us pain. Choose what it is you really want to care about and develop a more constructive approach to work, love, and life itself. Try this. Learn to say no to things that don't add value to your life. If you want to focus only on the things that really matter to you, it is vitally important to say no to everything else. You can't have the perfect career, lots of family time, and countless days to spend vacationing in the Caribbean. It's more important to miss out on the right things. So choose and focus your attention on the essentials and ignore the rest. Be totally ruthless with this.